Hello. Today on the podcast, we are welcoming our first guest, and it is Baily Hancock. She calls herself a professional friend maker. I think it's a great word for her. You will hear how we met in the interview, but it's through classic networking, so it seems only appropriate that she is the first guest on the show. You're going to hear a little bit about Baily's story, how she, had conversations with over 150 people in, I think, under 3 months, maybe 4 months time, how to re-engage people, what to do when you've been laid off to get your network going again. I think this is an episode that's really going to help so many people. And there are so many amazing takeaways in this episode, things that you can take and start applying for yourself. I think this is going to be a really motivating episode, a really inspiring episode to start getting out there and making better connections. But before we get into it, welcome to the Creating Opportunities podcast. This is the place where we help smart, ambitious professionals build better relationships to achieve success in all areas of their lives. And I am your host, Thompson. I am a speaker, a trainer, and an iced coffee lover, and I want to help you make deeper connections. And so today I am bringing on Baily to show you how. Hello, Baily. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being my first guest.
I'm so honored, and it's such a full circle moment because you were one of my very first guests on my very first podcast many moons ago. So it's just a lovely full circle moment.
It really is. And I just got done doing an Insta story talking about I'm going to have my first guest on. And I realized it's very appropriate to me that it's you because we met through just classic networking. We met at an event and exchanged cards and got coffee and did Whole30 together.
Oh my God.
Yes, but just goes to show, you meet people and it doesn't have to be all business all the time. And yeah, people come in and out of each other's lives. So what kind of brought us back together was we both, just to catch everyone up, back in late summer or early fall, I guess early fall for you, we both, we're just going to say, had career transitions at the same time. Also, we have always kind of had similar interests around connection and relationship building, and we're kind of talking about the same things. And you reached out and said, hey, we should get on a call. And I went, you beat me to it. You were literally on my list. So that kind of reconnected us again. But I have seen you very hot and heavy on LinkedIn for the last couple of months. I would just like to hear more about kind of how did that start for you?
The career transition, if you will. Yes, it started with an unexpected Zoom call by my brand new manager, allowing me the opportunity to no longer work in an aligned job or a misaligned job. I ended up getting laid off from my job that I'd been at for the last almost 2 years at the end of November, the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. Lovely timing of the year. And honestly, within the first 30 minutes, of course, I was like, how dare you? I did everything right. I had just moved into a new role. I gave so much more of myself than I should have to that company and that job, but I was miserable. Truly, it was not a good fit for me in any way, shape, or form, underutilized and overworked, which is the worst combo. And so when I was let go, the first 30 minutes was I cycled through all the stages of grief. And then I came to the place of but I never have to go back there. And it was all virtual, but even just emotionally, mentally going back there, I was like, I don't ever have to do this
completely
again. So I did what I always do in times of transition or challenge. I reached out to my network and I was like, hey, y'all, this is what's going on. Here's the deal. I don't know what's next, but if anybody wants to reconnect, let's do it. I got the time. And that kicked off about 3-4 months worth of close to 150 conversations between mid-December to late March. And it was 100 and something of those were people I already knew. And then 40-ish were people brand new to my network who had been introduced by other people that I did know. Okay. And so I went into these conversations, the one with you included, being here's where I am. I can do these things. I don't know if I want to go back in-house, if I want to do my own thing again, because I ran my own business from end of 2016 through end of 2021. And between a kid, a pandemic, and another kid, I just totally burnt out running my own business, wanted some stability. Joke's on all of us with that one, right?
I know.
Let me go have some stability and work for somebody else who's just going to lay me off anyway. So let that be a lesson to us all that like stability is subjective and not real. So when I was laid off, I was like, do I really want to go back to working for myself? It didn't end well the last time, but I'm a new person this time. But I also have a lot more overhead than I had last time. It felt like such an open door that I could walk through. And in my heart of hearts, even with all the stress of running my own business, I had never been happier professionally than when I was working for myself. I also made the least amount of money in those 5 years that I had ever made, but there was possibility there. And, after a lot of deep talks with my husband, I was like, let me just see what I can do in the next couple of months. Let's see if I can just continue doing community strategy, but freelance. That's what I had been doing at this company. And so it's been almost 8 months now, and my objectives have changed a billion times. My title has changed a billion times. My focus has changed a billion times. But within the last few months, things have finally stopped moving and changing as much. And now I'm on a path. We're moving forward and it feels incredible. And I will say the comparison of this summer to last summer, mental health wise and even physical health wise, is night and day because I was so miserable. My body was telling me I was miserable. And this time around, still working on making the revenue, still getting the business up and running, but I am just infinitely happier just by nature of doing something that's more aligned with me and returning to my root, doing community building, connection, and collaboration. Like those are the things that I love more than anything. And I'm getting to do that all the time now. So it's been a windy road, but here we are.
Yeah, I completely understand because I too took a job again for stability. Had similar when I was let go, was in shock. And then I got let go I was working in a Starbucks and got let go at Starbucks. And the man across from me kind of looked at me like something bad just happened. And I just closed my laptop and walked out the door. And by the time I got home, I went, hey, none of that's my problem anymore. So refreshing.
Brilliant.
For me, I say it served a purpose for the time where I needed it. I was able to buy a new car, things like that. But the joke is on us when we think stability on that because, and I really applaud you for bringing up the revenue part because I think a lot of people like to showboat that entrepreneurship is oh, look how much money I'm making all the time. And it's no, I'm here for freedom. And one thing with it is at least there's always the possibility of more money. If you're in a job with a boss, and I'm not against those. I think you and I both are this way. I am not the entrepreneurship person that's this is so much better than being working for the man. Hi, I helped job seekers for 5 years. There is good to both. But one of the pros to me for running your own business, whether that's being a real estate agent or an entrepreneur or, creating a product, coach, whatever, is I can generate revenue in whatever way I want on whatever day I want. And that is something that I've come to realize, oh, I really enjoy that part that having a full-time job did not provide. I think there's something too for you talking about ooh, last time it didn't end well, etc. I don't know if you feel this way, but to me, I kind of call this my 2.0 era. It's yeah, I get to learn from those mistakes last time. I know what I did last time that did not benefit me. I know where to spend and invest money on what will actually move the needle forward for me and what doesn't.
Oh, completely. I'm not starting over.
Yeah.
I'm starting from, in a sense, where I left off, except this time I'm older, wiser. I know more. I know what kind of crippled the business last time. And for me, it's very clear. I tried to do it all by myself, which was the greatest irony being the fact that my last business, I was a collaboration consultant and I taught women how to run their businesses and grow their businesses with partnerships, but was not doing any of that for my own business. And a lot of it came from this fear of spending money, honestly, of well, I can't spend money till I'm making money. So therefore I can't hire. And there's so many ways that you can welcome support in, not just to your business, but to your career and your life as well. And working with other people on a similar path to you or who are maybe slightly a few steps ahead of you, just as a way to see the available options. You don't know what you don't know. And so when I came back to entrepreneurship, one of the things I knew from day one was I didn't want to do this all by myself this time. I really wanted to potentially hire a coach, do some programs where I could work on the parts of my business that I've always said I wanted to do, like keynote speaking, because last time I primarily used speaking and teaching as a means to market my business, which meant I was teaching and speaking and then having to still get the clients and then do the work with the clients. This time I was like, what if the speaking and teaching could be the thing that I make money from? And so I invested in a group coaching program that is teaching me how to build a keynote talk that you can sell for upwards of $10,000. I ended up being like the only person that signed up for the group program. So I ended up with one-on-one support,
Nice.
which is like the greatest gift ever. And I'm also working with a business coach who bases your business coaching on your astrology, which is right up my alley. I love that stuff. And it's affordable because it is a group program and it's spread across a year. And so I'm finding ways to make it work when in the past I would have just been like, I can't afford that. It's too expensive. I just need to do it on my own and figure it all out myself. And I will tell you, it's no surprise that it was about May of this year when things started. And that was exactly when I started working with those two people. I also started collaborating on a masterclass that I'm teaching with a guy that I met 4 years ago, right before the pandemic. He and I kind of like loosely stayed in touch online. He also was in LA, moved to Texas. I reached out to him on LinkedIn after the layoff too and was like, hey, I would love to catch up with you and see what you've been up to. We're now doing this masterclass together come end of August. And all three of those people really like came into my life in a recurring, consistent fashion in about May. And that is when things started moving and happening in my business. And there is a path towards profitability now. There is a path towards recurring revenue. It's very close and it's closer than it's ever been before because I finally was like, can I do this on my own to an extent and at what cost? Or could I have people come in and support me in the areas I need support, uplift what I'm doing, and really be an expander for me? And that's made all the difference in the world.
Yeah, no, I love that. Similar, back in June, I finally, someone's like course package, like really invested. I think it's figuring out like what are the wise investments to make? Because I'm seeing this too with so many business owners I talk to that they're starting to like, it's weird. You have the people who will pinch pennies on everything, and I go more that end. And then you have the people who don't have the money, but they will spend $20,000 on a group coaching program. And it's
Wild.
like, wait, but you could work one-on-one with this person for this number, or you could hire a copywriter for like there's a middle ground. And so I think it's figuring out what that middle ground is for each person and figuring out what it is that they need. But okay, so I want to go back to these like 3 months where you went hard on talking with people, because I think to a lot of people, they're like, oh, that sounds exhausting. And I'm curious, I guess the first question on it would be, did you have a system? Did you have boundaries? Did you have like, I only do 3 calls a day? Like, what did that look like?
Yes, it was looser in the beginning and it tightened up over time because it had to. But I'm a huge Calendly fan. I use it for everything. If my friends joke, when my first son was born in July of 2019, I set up a Calendly event for people to come visit him and meet him because I'm like, look, I'm not going to be able to handle people just popping in and out all day. I want boundaries. I want, like I want to be able to be slightly in control of like when these things happen. So I'm a massive Calendly fan. So I had a couple different Calendly meeting types set up. I had a virtual coffee date, which was for people that were new to me. And I had I think it's called like a catch-up chat type, which was for people I already knew. So that even when I looked at my calendar, I could distinguish like, okay, am I connecting with somebody new or am I meeting up with an old friend? Because that helped me to manage my energy, because newer people I find require a bit extra energy, whereas people you already know, you can dive right in and there's not as much preparation necessary. So I always had my parameters at like, I think no more than 3 of those kinds of calls a day. And I would set them at 30 minutes and I would try very hard to stick to that. But I'm very bad at ending calls on time, because if the conversation's flowing and I don't have another call right after, I kind of am like, that's fine. Let's just keep chatting. But, it was a lot. And I was sort of throwing those links out all willy-nilly because I didn't really have a clear path forward yet for myself. So anytime that's been the case in my life, I'm like, I'll just talk to people. And it's through my conversations and connections with people in my network that often give me clues and hints and ideas that I can then follow. So the highs of those calls were I got so many great, actually, I realized through all these conversations, there are 3 I's that you can get from most connection conversations with people: info, inspo, and intros. Those like information. I got so many great resources and recommendations for courses to check out, books to read, podcasts to listen to, like things like that. So like good information. Inspo is inspiration. It was like, oh, I love that idea. Have you thought about this? Or what about this? Like just really nice, like inspiring ideas and motivation and encouragement from people. And then intros were introductions to people that I should know based on the little bit that I gave people about what I was trying to do. So I got tons of info, and intros from those conversations, which then helped me start to figure out which way to navigate. Because, like I said, my last business was in collaboration consulting. I had just spent 2 years doing community strategy, and I was connecting like crazy with people. And so I was like, what are these 3 C's that keep circling me? And so I started referring to them as the 3 C's of saving humanity: community, connection, collaboration. And I didn't quite know what to do with that yet. So I kind of have left it right off to the side. But the downside of those calls was I also didn't have a clear objective for any of those calls. And I can't remember who it was, but some person was like, so, what are you hoping to get out of these calls? And I was like, honestly, I'm kind of just using them as a way to remind people I exist, catch up with people I haven't talked to in a while, reignite my network, because I did what we all say we shouldn't do, but do anyway, which is when I had that day job, I left my network just out to dry. Honestly,
Totally.
I was so overworked at that job, but it was something that I was like, well, okay, all your seeds are dead. Your plants have died. You need to go water them. You need to go see what you can salvage and plant a bunch of new ones. And that's what I was doing. So somebody said to me, like, well, what do you want from this? And I was like, I mean, nothing in particular. I'm really just looking to reconnect. And then I reframed it and I was like, honestly, I think sometimes connecting with the express purpose of just reconnecting or connecting is beautiful. Then people don't feel like you're trying to get something from them.
You're not being a user, right? That's what I think. That's the thing is, and that's what I try and teach people all the time. In fact, it's part of my keynote opens with like somebody messaging me on Facebook and going, happy birthday. Did you know I'm a financial advisor now? And I'm like, oh, I want to throw up. Like, yeah, that's so like, oh, you're just using me. You don't care about my birthday. And so it's like, yes, you do. It actually, I think the way you did it is so much better of we should just care about people. We should just connect to connect.
Oh, what a concept.
I know, shocking. We should just meet someone just to meet someone instead of being like, what can I get out of you? Or what can you get out of me? That's my whole thing about like, I don't subscribe to networking as give and take because so many people go on the like, networking, give first, help first. My thing is that's still transactional. It's just which way the transaction's going. And of course, I want people to help each other, of course. But I say care first. Care can be, hey, I saw you wrote this great post. I thought it was really awesome. Hey, I'd just like to catch up with you for 10 minutes. How's life going? Like, just that matters more than being like, what do you need? What's your objective? I want to point out too, just for everyone, I love that you did these calls without knowing what it is, because I think that's what actually stops most people. I was thinking about it just with something I'm working on. I'm like, when I worked in entertainment, which, that's the area where everyone's networking, I didn't network because I felt like I didn't bring anything to the table and I didn't know what I wanted from people and I didn't know what I could give to people. I didn't know what they could give to me. So I just didn't do it. Instead of what you did, and this is what I try to do now too, is conversations bring the clarity. You don't need to know on the front end. Just go have the conversation. You will figure it out from the conversation instead of being like, I need to know ahead of time exactly what I'm going to get out of this. Well, that's impossible. Just go talk.
You're limiting. It's the same idea with manifestation, right? Like there's this thought that you must have, if you're trying to manifest a new car, you have to picture the color and the seat and the steering wheel and all of that. And it same applies to networking, where it's like, yes, I think you should be intentional about what you want 100% and the kinds of people you want to connect with. Be 100% intentional, because otherwise it can feel really overwhelming if you're like, anybody's a possible connection and I'll take anything from it. So intentionality and having like this desired outcome you're trying to get don't have to be the same thing. And so, a lot of times if you go in being like, I want to talk to Cassie because I specifically want a job in a company she used to work for. That's fine to have as like one of many things you're open to
Right.
with the conversation. But instead, if you're like, oh, gosh, she's in a similar lane to me. We have similar networks, similar interests. Like, I'm just genuinely curious. What has she been up to? Where have our paths like continued to overlap with each other's without us even knowing? Like, going in with curiosity at the forefront is the key, because then you might find that if you're not hyper specific about what you want to get from that one person, the other person may surprise you with an opportunity that you didn't even know to ask for, or an idea that you would have never thought of had you geared the conversation in a very particular corner.
Yeah.
Right? So like having intention while also being open to where the conversation can lead is the key.
Yeah, I completely agree. I like to say it as have your goals, set your intention ahead, and then when you get in the conversation, throw it all away. It's
Yeah,
there.
that's fine.
It's in your
Good.
head.
Yeah.
You've thought about it.
Right, you're
So
not
it's
gonna
gonna
lose
be
it.
back there. But like if
Mhm.
you get on a call with someone, or I like using coffee as an example. If you go to coffee with someone and they just got the macadamia nut cold brew at Starbucks and they're obsessed with it, and you guys talk about that, and then that leads down the road to getting Starbucks and Target, and you spend 20 minutes on why you love Target, who cares? That means you
Honestly.
connected. Like you actually
You
enjoyed
have
each
rapport
other.
now. You found an overlap
Right.
on your two circles on the Venn diagram.
Yes.
Like that's so good, because it's true. It's like we often think that, okay, I'm going into a professional networking scenario. I call myself a professional friend maker, and it's funny because I came up with that almost 10 years ago when I was telling my then like 4-year-old nephew what I did for a living. It wasn't until just like very recently that I was like, actually, professional friend as a concept is kind of how I think of everybody I know. Like, I have only friends that are like, I know them through social circles only, and I don't even really know what they do for a living. But I have so few of those compared to friends I've made in quote unquote professional settings. And, you and I are a perfect example. Like when I meet somebody, I'm not looking at them as their job title. I'm looking at them as a human,
Right.
because how many job titles will one hold in their lifetime? Many, but they're still the same person underneath those titles. I'm just connecting with human beings who have jobs and have personal lives and interests. So whether you're trying to get a job, or you're trying to get new clients for your business, or you're trying to get professional opportunities, I feel like leading with curiosity about the person that you're talking to versus the person's job is just always going to be a faster route to find that connection point.
I completely agree. And I think that's actually where I'm curious your thoughts on this. That's where I now struggle with Zoom calls. Like I understand the efficiency of getting on a Zoom with a new person rather than even I've had people in town that are like, oh, let's meet up for coffee. And I'm like, that's a lot of my day to meet for a coffee. You know what I mean? And so I'd rather get on Zoom. However, I feel like online communication speeds up that we do get quicker if it's somebody that you haven't met before, or like maybe you've only met in like a online networking group or something like that. It just becomes, hi, so tell me about what you do. So tell me about what's going on in your business. Cool. Who do you need to, who are you looking to work with? And like the rapport building, I have found more difficult. I'm curious if you have found
you
that.
have to make
Yeah.
It's interesting. I've been talking about this recently with people who are kind of super connector types, or who have a lot of conversations. And something that's fairly consistent amongst all of us is we really try and enter the conversation by giving the other person the opportunity to lay the groundwork for how they're showing up to the call. So, coffee shop example, you're probably chit-chatting about your order, about the parking situation, about something you saw walking into the store.
Right.
Like, there's so many more organic opportunities to not talk about the specific reason you're there. So if you're not in a circumstance where you can do that, or you're just not interested in doing that, I like to start out conversations being like commenting on something that I can see. So I got on a call with a new person yesterday, and she has beautiful curly hair. And I was like, she's like, how are you? And I'm like, honestly, I'm really hot right now. Like, it's hot in LA. Like, my hair looks like yours, but if I did it like that during this weather, it would be gigantic. Like, we didn't even talk about what we came to talk about for like 10 minutes. Because we were chatting, and that led to something else, which led to something else. And then we're like, so anyway, nice to meet you. That happens more often than not with me on my connection calls. It'll be like 10 to 15 minutes in, and we're like, so anyway, great to meet you. Because it's like we've just had human talk the whole time. And that's always my intention. But it is a funny thing. You have to sort of it might feel inorganic at first to do that because it is easy to just jump right in, but it really ingratiates you to the other person, humanizes you to them. You do get to like connect on a person level first, which just makes the rest of the call so much more like smooth and natural than being like, oh yeah, okay, so we were connected because I was hoping, like, no, it just flows so much easier.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think this is a good reason why people need to not have Zoom backgrounds. Show me your real background, because then it gives me something to comment on. Wear the cute earrings. Wear what I like, do something. Because you're right. I'm thinking through somebody I met. We had met briefly in person, scheduled a call, and I don't even remember how, but one of us commented on beauty in some way. We talked for literally 25 of the 30 minutes about what makeup brands we like and, oh, have you tried this skincare and whatever. I'll talk to you again about the LinkedIn stuff and the networking stuff. It's fine.
We'll get there. Yes. And those get to be things too that like, I think, I don't know what to call this. It's like almost like
They're touch points.
In the in-between, right? Where it's like, okay, if Cass and I just talked about earrings and how we love beautiful, dangly, fun earrings, next time I see a cute pair of earrings, I'm going to take a picture and email it to you and be like, oh my God, look at these I just found. So it's like, it's ways to deepen that connection in the in-between.
Yeah, I know. We do need to come up with a good name for those. I say they're touch points too, but there are other things that are touch points, but that's my favorite.
Like, they're like catalyzers, right? They're like connection catalyzers in a way, or like it's like going out and sprinkling fertilizer on your garden, right? You don't have to do that.
Yeah.
You can just water and let the sun do its thing, or you can sprinkle fertilizer on it and it'll grow so much faster.
There's something though about it being like, there's something about it being lifestyle related though that I love. Like that's my thing, is that it's like all got to be hobby, lifestyle related things. And I think that's something that people forget about, that it's like, no, that tells somebody, I actually listened to you. I actually thought of you. So I joke, like I have a friend that we worked together at Wheel of Fortune 18 years ago, back when Juicy Couture was hot. Right? And we would talk about Juicy Couture, and we would talk about going in Bloomingdale's. And then if you remember, like a couple years ago, Juicy had a resurgence, and I walked into a Bloomingdale's.
We were all very nervous.
Yes, I walked into Bloomingdale's, and all of a sudden it was 2007 again, right? And there's like Juicy everywhere. And this person, we don't talk all the time anymore. We keep up here and there. I saw that Juicy stuff. I took a picture and sent it to her. I went, would you believe it's back? And of course she wrote back, and it's like, those are the things that can keep you reconnecting, whether it's 2 months later, 2 years later, like they're important to get those little lifestyle touches. 100%. So with these calls, with all these calls you did, what are tips you have? Like, here's the thing is, I think you have a much, I don't know how to put it. It's a positive thing. Like, I would say you're braver than most on the reaching out. And so for the people who are a little nervous about reaching out and being like, hey, we haven't talked in years, I'd love to get on a call, what tips or like motivation would you give them?
So would this be for somebody that's like, I want to reignite some of these older relationships?
Yes. Like, let's take the, like layoff out of it. Because I think that's the thing, is people need to do this no matter what. And so I know how I give to re-engage and like start those conversations, but I'm curious. I would love to know what you do.
I think the easiest way to do it is reach out in whatever form of communication you guys used to use, right? As long as you still have access to that. Obviously, if you're not at the same company, you can't Slack each other. But like if you were text friends, if you were email friends, if you were Instagram DM friends, use your former channel and reach out and be like, hey, Cass, it's been a minute. How are you? You popped into my mind the other day, and I would just love to see what you've been up to. Do you have like 20 minutes this week? Here's my link if you want to find some time. And tie it to one of those like touch points that we just talked about. If you're like, oh my God, you'll never believe what I just saw. Like having an entry point is always helpful, but it can be as simple as saying, you popped into my mind the other day, and I was curious, how you been? What's new? I'd love to catch up real quick. But like if you pitch it as like 15 or 25 minutes, that feels so doable. And you could even say like, I love walking personally. So do you want to go on a walk and talk with me? Like I'll give you a chat, or you give me a call, and we can walk around the neighborhood talking to each other on the phone. So you're like multitasking, right? Like if this person's a busy person, listen, make it easy for them to say yes.
Yep. No, I love that. I know somebody who does that. They say like, hey, I take a walk every day and I like to catch up with someone on my walk. want to schedule a time.
Mhm.
And then they're letting me know right off the bat, I'm going to be on my phone and you're going to hear traffic. So I kind of appreciate it
Exactly.
for that reason too. Because one thing I will say is
Totally.
like my pet peeve is when I show up for a Zoom and then the person's like, oh, sorry, my camera doesn't, oh, I'm not going to get on camera.
Now I just put on
Right.
mascara
Why do I have
and
lipstick
right.
on right now? Like,
Exactly. I
so I
agree.
like
I
that.
think like setting the tone in advance too. This is why I also like knowing the people that I generally will do that with. I know it's a much easier yes if I say, look, this can just be a phone call. Like we don't have to Zoom. I know we all have Zoom fatigue. Getting on another Zoom, even to see your cute face that you probably miss, is like just one more barrier. Sometimes what I'll do is with friends, I'll be like, if it's okay with you, I'd like to take this on a walk and talk, but we can quickly like pop on Zoom camera just to say hi and see each other's face and then go off camera. That works really well if you want to like have that human to human face point for a moment, touch point. But it comes down to just making it genuine and easy for them to say yes to. The saying they popped into your head it's probably true because how else are they in your brain? Right? Either you saw them on a feed or somebody mentioned their name or they organically popped into your mind. People love hearing that you're on there. Like that feels so nice to know that somebody's thinking about you.
Right. No, I completely agree. I know people, it's so funny because people think about that all the time. Like, oh, do I sound like such a weirdo? Then I'm like, oh, I thought of them. Are you kidding? If somebody messages me and goes, hey, I thought of you today. I'm like, you
Me?
You have so few seconds of your day and you took them to think of me?
It feels very flattering and people love to be flattered.
Yeah.
That's always a key too. Like if you don't know what to say or you're feeling weird about it, like find a way to flatter them in some way. Like, oh my God, I saw that you got promoted, or oh, I loved that Instagram story you shared the other day. It really resonated with me, or whatever. Like that's one of my tips in my checklist actually is like do your homework. Like go do a light stalking before you get on the phone with them so that you have something to talk about. It's nice to have that security blanket of knowing they just posted this update and like, okay, I can talk to them about this.
Yeah.
And that can be the jumping off point so you're not just going in cold.
Yeah. So then another question I have, did you kind of go with like lowest barrier to entry people first? And I just mean that in the sense of like, I think we all have people in our networks or in our past that we go, that's an easy person to just message and be like, hey, let's catch up. And then there are people in there that you go, I'd like to catch up with them, but I'm a little nervous to reach out. When I worked in career coaching for colleges, we would tell students, hey, when you go to the career fair, if your dream table at the fair is Google, don't go to Google first. Go to that other table first and warm. And I'm curious if you like maybe even subconsciously did that.
It's interesting. I've never thought about that. But if I consider who I talked to in the beginning versus who I talked to later on, I also did very little outreach. I posted on LinkedIn. I decided that like, okay, I've neglected LinkedIn for the last 2 years. LinkedIn is the longest social network that I've been on other than Facebook. The people of all of my past jobs and iterations of my career, and I have a very robust network on there. And I will say, even in the 2 years that I was in-house, I wasn't posting or engaging much on LinkedIn, but I was still connecting with people on LinkedIn. So as I would meet new clients from that job, I would connect with them there. I really just decided I was going to start posting every day, which is a lot and it's not recommended. But I was like, I'm just going to show up here every day. I had a reminder on my calendar that said water LinkedIn with a little plant emoji. And it was from 9 to 9:30 every day. And so I would schedule my post to go up at 9 and then I would just go participate. I would comment on people's things. I'd respond to DMs. And so most of my conversations were inbound. So there were, of course, people that I did reach out to, but the majority of them were people saying, hey, I'd love to catch up, and me being like, yes. Or I would see somebody post something and say, hey, I love what you posted. Let's connect. So I didn't sit down with my network per se and like look at everybody and make a priority list. However, there were a couple people who I know are basically like portals to really great opportunities. And I sort of saved reaching out to them till I felt like I had a little bit better of a grasp on what I was doing because I didn't want to blow the opportunity, right? So there were a few people that I waited till 4 or 5 months in when I had a much clearer understanding of what it was that I was looking for because I knew they would ask. I knew that they would say to me, how can I help you? Like, they're busy people.
Yeah.
And I knew that they were going to lead with that. It wasn't going to be fluff. It wasn't going to be like just chit chat. So I was like, okay, before I reach out to these couple of people, I'm going to make sure I have my shit together. I'm going to make sure that like I know what I want. I know how they can help me, and I'm going to present those specific options. But the bulk, I would say 99% of my conversations came to me very organically, whether it was me seeing them post and reaching out or them reaching out to me.
That makes sense to me, because I think that's the thing is like, you don't want to waste. There are certain people that it's being respectful of their time to go, I know this
100%.
person's doing me a solid if they get on this call. And so I don't want to waste their time by being like, oh, just want to catch up. They're like, what do you want? What do you need? And so it's worth like thinking that through and kind of getting your feet wet first. I'm curious from this, I guess, two different things. Like, one, from those calls, I love that you started with like, I'm just going to go and I don't have an objective. At what point, though, will you make an ask? And are you okay making an ask on that catch-up call if the opportunity presents itself?
Absolutely. If somebody says to you, how can I best support you? Have at least something they can do. So even though I didn't have a clear objective for all of those calls on a big picture purpose level, I always said, I'm interested in being a guest on podcasts because I love doing podcast guest appearances because I love to talk to people. And being a guest on podcasts also helps me understand what other people don't know about what I know about. Answering questions for me is a really good way for me to understand what my expertise really is. I know that I can talk for years about community connection and collaboration, and being on podcasts, it's productive. It's a great way to get in front of new audiences, and it can be a really good value add for the podcast itself. So that was always my go-to ask. If you know of any podcasts or you have a podcast that talks about the 3 C's, I would love to be a guest. Here's my media page. Here's a blurb you can use to introduce me. So I made it stupid easy for people to say yes to that and to pass my information on. And then as my objectives got more clear, then I swapped out that ask for a different one. Or, it's always very relevant to what I'm working on. But I always had some way that they could help me, because then it can also feel, people I think mistakenly think that asking or accepting support is like this weird imbalance of power or energy or something. I have felt this way. I'll say I feel this way. But in reality, if you're helping somebody else, which inevitably on all these calls, I also offered up one of the 3 I's, usually introduction, right? And so if I'm offering something up and then I'm giving them no way to support me back, that feels worse than an even value exchange. So having some way that people can support you is very helpful, not just for you, but for the relationship itself.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I love that you came up with these as 3 I's. I've talked about these things, but I'm like, oh, I love the alliteration on it. It's great. What is like one tip you would give people who are going to go out and re-engage? Like, what's the thing they can go do today?
I think thinking about the people in your career who have been supportive along the way already, people that have been your cheerleaders, they've been people out there like speaking your name in rooms that you weren't in. Start with those people, because if you think about the warm-up period, which is what a re-engagement is, of course, start with the people that are warmest to you, right? Like, don't go into the person you're trying to meet that you're intimidated by. Like, that's not the right move. Start with the people you care about, that you have rapport, even if it's been years since you've talked. I literally had conversations with people that I had not spoken to in 10 years. And it was like no time passed, because back then we were friendly, we left on great terms. So start with the easy ones, to your point of like picking people that are sort of maybe easier, low-hanging fruit. Get your feet wet, get comfortable with the process, like warm yourself up. It's like trying to run a marathon when you haven't run in 5 years. Go slow, start slow and easy. And then you'll get limber again. You'll like start to feel strong in this again. And then that's when you can kind of take on the conversations that are maybe a bit more intimidating. But I think with anything, right? Like, start with the people who you already have trust and a relationship built with, and just fan the flames of it a little, nurture it a little, sprinkle some of that fertilizer on it, right? Like, give it a little extra water, and then that'll encourage you to keep doing it with maybe people that you don't have as deep of a relationship with.
Yeah. I love that as a place to start. So, okay, I will recommend everyone to go follow you on LinkedIn, because I do love, we didn't even get into it, but you also were giving recap, right? You were doing these connection recaps.
Roundups.
Yes, which was great. Just when people go, oh, I don't know what content to put on LinkedIn. Great idea right there. So go check those out. But you also mentioned that connection list. Where can people find that?
Yes, if you go to overlapcollective.com, that will actually sneakily redirect you to my website, which is bailyhancock.com, but nobody spells Baily correctly. Okay. So that's my sneaky trick. Go to overlapcollective.com and then you'll see I have a connection checklist. It's there. It's designed to help you really catalyze connection, whether you've known the person for years and you're catching up or you're engaging somebody new for the very first time. So it's 10 tips to help you deepen and catalyze a connection. It's honestly something I created for myself through all of these conversations because I needed a guide too. It just gave me a little bit of a rubric almost to use, and I really love a structure. Clearly, I have all of these little frameworks and structures, and they're for me. And if they're helpful for other people, cool. So the connection checklist is available on my website. And yes, I'd love to connect on LinkedIn. Send me a DM and say, I heard you on Cass's podcast. And that way we'll know what our overlap is.
Yes. And I'll put a link. I have the link to the connection checklist too. I'll put it in the description and in the show notes. It actually pairs very nicely with, I have a connection messages swipe file of like, what do you reach out and say to start that connection? And so the two pair very nicely together. So I recommend everyone getting both, but you can check those out below. And I will put your LinkedIn in the show notes as well. But thank you very much for being here. It's so fun catching up with you. It's so fun to see kind of what's happening, you know, what's going on, what this build has been, and what's going to be next. So I thank you for being here.
Thank you, Cass. Thank you, everybody. This was so fun. And keep listening to Cass. She's the connection queen.
So thank you for listening to the Creating Opportunities podcast. If you could help us out, one thing that would be great is to leave a review on Apple iTunes podcast. Also, if you are watching this on YouTube, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when new episodes come out. And like I said a minute ago, I have that connections swipe file for what to say to make better connections. It pairs great with Baily's connection checklist. So grab both of those in the show notes or the description, and we'll talk to you in the next episode. Bye.